everyone, and welcome to ScIQ. So this last week, you might have seen from our Instagram and our Snapchat and our Facebook that we were at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. If you haven't heard of South by Southwest, it's this huge interactive festival for digital folks or people that do things on video and in the digital space. Cenk was also on a panel, so it was awesome to be able to hang out with him. It was a huge honor to be there. What follows is the highlights of the speech that I gave about SciWars. So if you're used to our regular programming, this might be a little bit basic for you and you might want to skip to watching what about other shorter videos. Oh great, you're still here. So if you're like me and you get really frustrated with people who fight against science, so like climate change deniers and anti-vaxxers and the food babe, then watch on, as these are my tactics for how to fight back. Enjoy.
Some people, there just is no winning. You can't argue with them, you can't turn them around to your point of view. I love this one because it kind of summarizes how I felt. Arguing with science denialists is like playing chess with a pigeon. No matter how good you are at chess, the pigeon is just going to knock over the pieces, crap on the board, and then strut around acting like it won. Has anyone had that experience? Yes, good. You know how I feel. But I thought, you know what, I'm a scientist. I should be able to science a solution to this problem. How do I get people to listen to me and to listen to science? And so I decided to apply the scientific method and attempt to go into the mind of a science denialist and try and figure out why they weren't listening to science. Like all good science questions, we can do testing, we can do studies, we can find answers. And so I classified science denialists into like 3 broad categories. One is the scientifically illiterate. Does anyone know who this is a picture of? It's Vani Hari. She's the food babe. And she says, if you shouldn't eat anything if you can't pronounce it. So that just means I don't understand it, so I don't trust it. So positions like a lot of anti-GMO sentiment can often come from a place of just not understanding and being a little bit risk-averse against stuff we don't know about. So I don't blame people who are scientifically illiterate or don't understand to make choices that are on the cautious side when it comes to science. After the scientifically illiterate, we have the scientifically irrational. So these are people like my good neuroscience friend, Mr. Carson here, where he understands science. Like, this guy's a neuroscientist or neurosurgeon. He's a clever guy, but he has pre-existing views that conflict with science. So he has a worldview already, and then when new information conflicts with that, he holds onto his worldview. So a lot of creationists and new earthers, people who rely on the power of prayer instead of medicine, they would fall into this scientific irrational category. And the third category is the category I want to talk about today, and this is the science denialists. So they are the people that know what the science is, and they understand it, but then they reject it for some sort of motivation. Now that motivation could be financial, so oil companies who argue against climate change do so for financial reasons. It could be for political reasons, so Donald Trump has famously argued that Muslims should be deported on the grounds that a study showed that Muslims held anti-American sentiment. So he knew that the study was not quite right, but he still chose to use that study for political gain. And it can also be people that are doing it for no particular reason other than convenience, as we saw in Flint, Michigan, where a lot of people knew what was happening, but just chose not to tell the public about it because it would be more paperwork for them. But why does this even matter? Why is science worth fighting for? A lot of scientists are like, I just want to be in my lab, I just want to do my science, and that should be the end of it. Why is it worth fighting to get science to these people when it seems like an uphill battle? Because when science isn't communicated well, we can't understand the world. The science is just understanding the world, and if we don't understand the world properly, we can't make good choices. And if we can't make good choices in our things like our education and our food and our public policy, then people can die. And so some like people dying is a more extreme version, but we do things like destroy the planet, for example. And I know this because I did it. I mean, I didn't actually kill anyone, but I did stand on the dark side. This is me. I used to work for the world's largest PR agency. I was the vice president of digital public relations for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So my job was to be on the dark side And there's a lot of similarities between PR, yes, all the PR people in the world, in the room, and the science communicators. So both of them really care about talking to the public, bringing ideas to the public, but they do it in really different ways. Because science communicators are trying to bring people the truth, whereas public relation people don't often care what the truth is, we're there to sell a product. So in public relations, my job is not to find the best product for a person, but to sell them that product no matter what. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, everyone picks on oil companies, but you can't go to Shell as their PR representative and be like, "Hi Shell, thank you so much for your $1 million campaign. The budget's been great. I got a bonus this month. But I realized that if I do this PR campaign for you, then I will have directly contributed to the demise of the planet. So I'm going to take that budget and like help educate people." No, Shell doesn't want you to do that. But that's fine. Like, everyone needs energy. I get more annoyed with companies like this. They actually have science in the title. They're trying to use science to sell products in a way that's really not scientific. You can use the shampoo all you like, but at the end of the 6-week period, I know from experience, it doesn't matter how much technology they promise you, my hair's still gonna be a hot mess. So I got frustrated that PR had all these incredible tricks and lessons for me, and PR often looks like this, whereas science communication still looks like this. And this is my colleague Beck, who's behind the camera. She got frustrated at me being like, "Beck, oh my gosh, science." And she was like, "Can you just go and tell someone else?" And that's why we now have a science communication channel called ScIQ, so I can share that love of science with the world. So science is different from PR, marketing, and that sort of communication in 3 key ways. Science has a lot to learn from the way that marketing communicates. First is assumed engagement. So when we're science teachers, we kind of assume that people care. When we're writing pamphlets or information, we're assuming that people are already ready to get that information, whereas marketing people assume that no one cares. And so they're really concerned about what hook you're going to use to get people to be interested. The second is that science often communicates in an information-based way, whereas marketing is a lot more emotion-based. Coca-Cola never had commercials saying, "Please buy our product because it's the best, and here's the studies that show it." They use another method, which is emotion. And scientists assume that people are empty vessels. They often assume that there's nothing in our brains, and if we just bring information to the people, it will go into their brain, and then they'll be educated, and they'll know. Whereas marketers do a lot of research and try and understand the demographics of who they're marketing to. They really want to know what you already think, so they can use that information to help get the product to you. I got tired of being on the side of scientists who just want to give information and no one wants to listen. I know a lot of you have probably been in this sort of situation before where you're like, "Please just shut up." You get tired of people at the party that are trying to tell you about themselves. You get tired of being had information pushed onto you. And a lot of people who don't see themselves as science people will get shut down as soon as they hear a science-framed message. So we think of people's brains as being empty, right? Like, my brain's empty, I'm going to give you the information, and then you're going to be knowledgeable and you'll know stuff. But the truth is that people's brains are actually full of stuff. Sometimes that stuff is wrong. So the logic that you used was great logic, it wasn't the right answer. But when you're given information, all you do is kind of get that information, amalgamate it with what you've already got in your head, and then all you feel is more confident in your incorrect answer. So information is not the way to convince people of something, especially if they're trying to use the information they already have in their brain. So for example, we say stuff like this all the time. Scientists will say, "Climate change is real." But if you give that information to someone that doesn't believe in climate change already, they're going to say, "Leftists are scaremongering." So they hear climate change is real, they amalgamate it with who's the source of the information, what do I already feel about this topic, and then they give their own output. They understand exactly what you're saying, but they're not taking that information at face value. Use the power of story. So I work part-time at this place. It's the New York Hall of Science. And the New York Hall of Science is a wonderful science organization aimed at getting children involved in science, technology, engineering, and math. And they realize they have such wonderful stories happening there every day. Not only stories about science and the research that they're doing, but the activities and the events that they have on. But they didn't have a really effective way of telling their story to a large audience. So what my job is at the New York Hall of Science is I train young people to use video to tell stories. So I get students that may have an interest in science or may not, and we teach them the and, but, therefore method. Most students that are younger than college age already have had cameras all their lives in their phones. And we encourage them to use that storytelling structure to tell stories about what's happening in the museum. And if anyone's come from a not-for-profit or a science-based organization, I really encourage you to tap into your youth community, because this is one way that we're able to tell at least one video story every week. It's an incredible program.
Hi everyone, I'm Jayde Lovell, resident science nerd on the Young Turks Network. You're watching ScIQ and we know you don't want to miss an episode, so please click the subscribe button down below.